Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has called on his European Union counterparts to step up their commitments to Kyiv's war effort to prevent what he described as worst-case scenarios. Many EU foreign and defense ministers meeting in Luxembourg expressed relief over the U.S. House of Representatives approving a massive foreign aid package for Ukraine over the weekend. But the EU ministers stopped short of pledging more Patriot air defense systems, as has been urgently requested by Kyiv. I'd like to bring in William Courtney, a senior fellow at the RAND think tank in Washington, D.C. Before that, he served as U.S. ambassador to Kazakhstan and Georgia and was also special assistant to the president for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasia. A very warm welcome. Thank you for taking the time. Now, you have written on X, not since the failure of Russian forces 2 years ago to seize Kyiv and capture or kill Zelensky, has Russia suffered a failure as dramatic as today's House vote for Ukraine aid. Could you please tell us a little bit more about that? What makes this round of funding so significant?
This is really an interesting discussion in the House of Representatives, because the Republican Party, since the time of President Reagan, has seen itself, portrayed itself as the party of national security for the United States. Suddenly in the House, there's been a debate where Republican isolationists seem to be wanting to walk back from that. But as it turned out, Speaker Mike Johnson, the Democrats, and the other half of the Republicans who still do see security as an important issue for the Republican Party, they banded together. So the vote was almost 3-1 in favor of providing that Ukraine aid. This defeat will be tough for the isolationists. They may not be able to come back in the future. So that is one way that this is probably the most significant or most dramatic change since the Russian loss at the beginning of the war.
And from Ukraine's perspective, how useful do you think this will be? They've been asking for this aid for months, and I think there was a lot of relief in Kyiv to hear that it has now cleared the House of Representatives.
So the ammunition will be the most immediate and perhaps the most important part of this, because as we've seen in recent weeks, Ukraine has lacked ammunition to deal with some of the cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones that have destroyed, for example, power plants and destroyed expensive power plants in Ukraine. So the ammunition to help deal with air defense will be quite important. F-16s will be coming along in a few months, and they also can play an important role in countering drones and cruise missiles, although not ballistic missiles. For that, you pretty much need Patriots. The second aspect of this is the fighting along the lines. The Ukrainians have been digging ditches and putting other barriers to prevent further aggression by Russian forces, but now they will also have ammunition to back up those fixed obstacles. So that will be important. The probability of a Russian lunge now that's successful has gone way down.
And just using your long experience working in the region, how might the Kremlin react to seeing this latest aid package pass? Do you think they will be concerned about seeing this continued funding for Ukraine?
From the Kremlin's perspective now, what they've seen in the last couple of months is that the EU has fully funded its pledge for assistance to Ukraine, and now the U.S. is fully funding its pledge. There's no Ukraine fatigue that is evident in the West. The Kremlin had long thought there was fatigue, that Western decadence, Western inability to work together would cause the West to lose heart in supporting Ukraine. It's turned out that is not the case. So from the Kremlin's perspective, the correlation of forces now may be changing significantly in Ukraine's favor.
So, but do you think this is then the end of Ukraine fatigue, as you've mentioned? How long can this aid last? At some point, Kyiv will require additional assistance. And of course, there's the looming prospect that the election of Donald Trump as U.S. president could mean a very drastic change in U.S. policy.
This assistance will likely last close to the end of the year, and then new assistance will be required. But because of the political impact of a vote almost 3-1 in favor of aid now, it's not likely that opponents of aid are going to be able to come back and prevent aid in the future. So I think the prospects for future aid are probably pretty good. And certainly in Europe, we see Europe becoming more and more committed to the defense of Ukraine as important because Russia is posing a direct threat to European security. So on neither side are we likely to see Ukraine fatigue in the next year or two anyway.
Do you expect to see Europe take on a bigger and leading role in that sense in the years ahead?
Yes, in fact, it already has. Of course, Europe has been providing more overall assistance to Ukraine than the U.S. has significantly, but we're now seeing the Europeans talk about expanding defense production and pulling more equipment out of their own arsenals to provide to Ukraine. So I think we're going to see Europe playing a very positive and stronger role.
Now, just for some closing thoughts, I'd like to get a sense of the bigger picture here. Do you think that Europeans can also still be confident that the transatlantic relationship with the U.S. remains and will remain a pillar of its peace and security?
The Europeans are right to be concerned about a potential election in November, which could change the way the U.S. goes with this. But we have seen in the past, President Trump has been in the office before, but yet most U.S. policies continue as they have been. In fact, it was under President Trump that the U.S. first provided lethal arms, Javelin anti-tank missiles, to Ukraine. And because of the size of the vote in the House and the Senate vote is likely to be somewhat similar, there's going to be a lot of momentum in the legislative branch to continue to support Ukraine.
Well, thank you very much for that perspective. That is William Courtney, a senior fellow at the RAND think tank in Washington. We very much appreciate your time today.